Here we have a Coca-Cola Oreo mashup, zero sugar. And I have to say, it's pretty darn good. All right, I've been dragged on Twitter for drinking this, but it's good. I mean, I gotta say, I don't drink them all the time, but it's pretty good. Yeah, give it a shot if you haven't. I saw Summer Yeager respond to my post on this, and she had in her hand a Oreo Coca-Cola flavored, which I also have tried, and it wasn't. I like this better. The Oreo was good too, but it had a Coca-Cola smell to it, definitely, and there was definitely a Coca-Cola taste to it, but the overwhelming flavor was kind of a lemony flavor, which I'm not quite sure I understand. But people in the comments are saying, well, think about all the chemicals that they use to make it taste like that. But I don't know. I just think they use Coke. Could be just me. I don't know. There's a lot of chemicals in Coke too. I have no idea. But it's not an everyday thing over here at the Robles house. But every now and then you see something, you're like, that's weird. I got to try that. Anyway, that's not what this episode is about. This episode is about the glorious future that I envision. The Reformed Inc. glorious future that could be ours. I have a dream, my friends. I do. I have a dream of what the future could look like. And I think that it's not unattainable if we all just search deep down into our hearts. And I think that there's some godly wisdom to be had here as well, and looking into the Bible of how to treat people and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of godly wisdom out there, and I know there's a lot of blackpilling about the state of the Reformed circles, the Reformed Inc., as people call it. There's a lot of blackpilling out there. But as I sit here drinking my Coca-Cola zero sugar Oreo flavored, I can't help but feel optimistic. I mean, call me crazy, but I'm optimistic for the future. I think that there's a glorious future ahead of us, and I don't think you have to look too far to see it. And obviously, I'm not pleased with the situation with Jeff Durbin dropping out of the Reformed, the Right Response Conference. It doesn't make me happy. I think that I'm not pleased, of course, with the way that Stephen Wolf has been treated in general by Dr. White and others. I'm not pleased by that, so I'm not trying to bury that and say it's not happening. It definitely is happening, and it's no bueno. That's my official declaration. It is no bueno. For all of you Americans out there, that means it's not good. Anyway, but it doesn't have to be this way, and I don't think it's going to be this way for very long. I think we will learn. I asked the question rhetorically the other day, will we ever learn how to treat each other? And I'm going to answer my rhetorical question with a big yes. We are going to learn, because there's too many good examples out there of our glorious future that we can have, my friends. We can have it if we just try. I envision a future with a lot of fighting. I do. A future with fighting and sharp rhetoric and all of that kind of thing. I enjoy it. I think it's healthy. I've said this numerous times. I don't have to explain why. It is healthy. It's good. I enjoy it. I think it's valuable. It actually pushes, the conversation forward. There's a place for that kind of thing. And I think in our time, some people say we have too much of that kind of thing. I don't think so. I think we have too much of the glad handing and the pats on the back and stuff like that. That's what I think we have too much of. But hey, I'm just one person. It's just my perspective. But I see a future with lots of fighting and sharp rhetoric and figuring things out. And let me just make one thing clear. I'm not talking about the Anons on Twitter. I think I have a special place in my heart for Anons. I'm not against Anons, but that's not. We shouldn't allow the Anons on Twitter and things like that to be how we define how things go, how things are going. You know what I mean? Because people online are going to act like people online. There's nothing wrong with that. I was just talking to a blind man today on Twitter. I didn't know he was blind, but he is blind, and his screen name is The Blind Guide. And, he said something idiotic, and so I responded, hey, your screen name is pretty appropriate. And then he feigned offense. Oh, what does my disability have to do with any of that? Well, obviously I didn't know he was disabled, but and I responded. I said, I think you know exactly what has to do with it. That's a phrase from the Bible. We all understand, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? There's always going to be the reply guys and stuff like that. They're always going to have idiotic takes and stuff like that, and you can choose to engage them or not. In this case, I chose to engage him. I don't do that all the time, but I chose to engage him. But people are going to say all kinds of crazy things online. That's okay. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the leadership, of which I do not count myself as one of them. I'm not one of these guys that people tries to get to speak at conferences. I go to conferences and sometimes I speak at them, but I'm not drawing a crowd, if you know what I mean. I'm not one of these leaders that I'm talking about. Although I recognize I have a role, and I'll accept my role. But I'm talking about the leadership here, because the sharp rhetoric between the leaders, I think, is healthy. I think it's good. I think it needs to happen. And I think we need to see the interaction and how it happens and what it means and what it doesn't mean as a random on the internet. I'm going to put myself in that category because in many ways, I'm one of you guys, man. I'm not trying to dismiss anons on the internet. I'm one of you. I get it. But a lot of times we need to see how these interactions work. And so, listen, the internet people are going to say what internet people say. I'm talking about the glorious future of our leadership, of our thought leaders, of our influencers. Can I say the word influencers? I'm talking about the reformed influencers. It's not an insult. Maybe it is. Don't take it as an insult. I don't mean it like an insult. But you know what I'm talking about. And the Jeff Durbin thing, leaving the conference because he said some things about James White or disrespectful or unwise and stuff like that, that is not the way forward. That has no place in our glorious future. And we've been down that road before. And hear me say this. I'm not saying Jeff Durbin is in the same boat as Big Eva. He's not in the same boat. But in this way, this tactic, this strategy of shunning because of alleged online behavior, that is squarely out of the Big Eva playbook. So hear me saying, I'm not saying he's the enemy. I am not saying he's subversive. I'm not saying that about James White either. I'm not saying any of those things. But this particular tactic was borrowed, was stolen, was cheat sheeted from Big Eva. That has no place in our glorious future. None at all. Our glorious future is demonstrated by many people in our movement. And I think these are the people whose influence is gaining, while others' influence may be waning. And so we don't need to look too far. We don't need to look too far to find these examples. I'll throw one out there for you. This is an obvious one. Doug Wilson, by no means perfect. I think sometimes the way he signals is not good. But one thing I do say about him, one thing to his credit, among the many other things I could say to his credit, there's lots of stuff. I mean, I've got very few quibbles with Doug Wilson, very few. And the mountain of good things is like a mile high. But one thing you got to give him is that he is willing to lean in. Dare I borrow something from Big Eva too? Lean in to people he disagrees with in a cordial, in a very warm kind of a way. He disagrees with Stephen Wolf on many things. Maybe not many, but some things, serious things. And yet, he published his book. And yet, he's been able to talk to him like a regular human being. And some of those conversations, in my opinion, have been the most informative for me, the ones where I've learned the most. He's willing to have that conversation. And he's done that with many people he disagrees with. It's not picking and choosing his friends or the people he's published books with. This is just part of his character. You got to give him credit for that. Despite all the complaints about how he's signaling about this or that, at the end of the day, you got to give him some credit. He absolutely we'll have that conversation. He's not just going to lob the grenades and then shun you. You know what I mean? He's not just going to say, oh, this is the most dangerous thing I've ever heard. And by the way, I'm not going to talk to you because of your behavior. It's not him. It's not him. Let me give you another name. Another name that I think in many ways exemplifies the way forward. Our glorious future. Our glorious future. Let me get another sip here. Michael Foster. I got to say, Michael Foster is consistently very helpful with his Twitter feed. He's consistently very level-headed with his content and all of these things. And I happen to know for a fact that Michael Foster is friends with and warm and reasonable and willing to talk to and share platforms with people with whom he disagrees very much on certain topics. It's just part of his character. He's able to make friends and be a friend to someone with whom he's got sharp disagreements with. I gotta say, you don't have to look too far to see these examples. That is the way forward, my friends. And notice, Michael Foster uses sharp rhetoric. Doug Wilson uses sharp rhetoric. I'm not saying that's bad. That's good. I think that's a feature, not a bug. That's a feature. And yet, when the chips are on the table and we're talking about important issues, he will come to that table. He doesn't have to pretend like there's very few Christians out there and everyone maybe is ostensibly this or ostensibly that, claims to be a Christian. None of that stuff. He accepts your profession and will talk to you like a brother. And he won't try to destroy the effort towards similar goals, but very different tactics. See, that's another thing that I think has no place in our glorious future. No place whatsoever. Our glorious future must learn to work together when our goals are so similar. We might have different tactics. We might sharply disagree on tactics. But the one thing we must not do is try to destroy those whose tactics we disagree. That's one thing we must not do. We don't throw them to the wolves. We don't use the tools and the weapons and the strategies and the tactics of our enemies against those who we share goals, but maybe not all I's are dotted or all T's crossed. Michael Foster's a good example. Let me give you another one. I am a little biased, I will admit. I am a little biased. But Pastor Joel Webbin. Pastor Joel Webbin is another example of our glorious future. I'll tell you that right now. Now, here's the thing. This whole conference snafu, kerfluffle, this whole conference kerfluffle, it's all Joel's fault. I'm just going to say that. This whole thing with the Jeff Durbin thing and the Stephen Wolf thing, you got to put it at the feet of Joel Webbin. It's his fault. He's the one who caused it. Because, and he's got to own that. Joel, if you're listening, I didn't ask you permission to say this, but I'm just going to say it. It's your fault. Because here's the thing. Joel had a cockamamie idea, wild idea. And he said, man, we got to put together a conference. We got work to do. I mean, we got the trash world, and we got to figure out how to confront the trash world, and there's all these different ideas and positions and beliefs. I've got a wild idea. Let's all come together. Let's do it. Let's put a united front up against fake trash world. And maybe even some sparks will fly. Iron sharpens iron, after all. That's what I thought. Maybe even some disagreements could be hashed out. I'm not saying they're going to be resolved. Man, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be a way to move forward, to say, hey, oh, hold on. Got a call coming in. I'm going to have to call that person back. That's an important call. I'm almost done here. Anyway, wouldn't that be a way wouldn't that be awesome? We could hash these out. We could talk about where we disagree and bring clarity. We could see who's being more consistent, who's not. Let's talk it out. That was his wild idea. And Obviously, it didn't work, but man, is he trying. You got to give him credit. The path of Joel Webben, he's trying to hold all this together. And let me say this, too, because I happen to talk to Joel every now and then, and I happen to be in a few private Signal chats and stuff like that with Joel. Every now and then. I don't participate too much in a lot of that stuff, but I do participate. And I see some of the side conversations of various things. Someone will say something wild, or someone will disagree with something that Joel agrees with, and stuff like that, and maybe say some things, nasty things about a position that Joel holds. And I see the conversations. There is disagreement among the ranks. But often we strategize on how to hash those disagreements out, how to present our united front. And I've heard him say things like, look, I'm not with you on that, but I won't signal against you. Here's why. Because I am not going to throw you to the wolves over this disagreement. We have such similar goals. We have a lot in common. We want the same things. But maybe I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to be against it. I'm not going to say that same thing that you said about so-and-so or this theology or whatever. He's a friend. He's trying to work together. He's trying to unify things. He's trying to make progress. That, my friends, is our glorious future. Working together and figuring it out. And I personally believe, I'm very optimistic about this. We are going to figure this out. We're going to make it happen. That's the bottom line. We're going to make it happen. Anyway, I hope you found this video helpful. God bless.
Puro fuego es mi amor por ti.